Sound check 1 2 3. Sound check 1 2 3.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Public Works Committee meeting for February 2nd, 2026. We have quorum present for today's meeting, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. A reminder to have all your electronic devices switched to the non-audible function during the committee meeting. With me today in chambers, we have Councillor Francis, Councillor Taddison, Councillor Jackson, Councillor Beattie, Councillor Pauls, Councillor Cooper, Councillor Maureen Wilson, Councillor Crutch, Councillor Huang, Councillor Kassar, and joining us virtually, we have Councillor Alex Wilson. I want to take a moment really quickly at the beginning of the meeting just to acknowledge the buses that are at each committee member's table. HSR launched its first, or I guess, in a series of public arts history, Black History Month buses. This one was done in consultation with the city's Black History and Heritage Group and designed by local artist Stilo Star, and the artwork honors community leader Queen C. Through bold visuals and storytelling, the bus encourages curiosity and conversations about Black history and the ongoing contributions of Black Hamiltonians. Inside the bus, riders will find messages sharing Queen C's story and her community impact, offering small moments for learning and connection during daily trips. Thank you so much for this initiative and for giving us an opportunity to kick off our February meeting recognizing this great effort. On to approval of the agenda. Committee members, may I please get a mover and seconder for approval of the agenda? Thank you, Councillor Beattie, seconded by Councillor Pauls. Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, hand vote please. All those in favor? Thank you. On to declarations of interest. Are there any? Seeing none, we'll move on to approval of our minutes of our previous meeting from January 12th this year. Mover and seconder, moved by Councillor Huang, seconded by Councillor Kassar to adopt the previous minutes. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, again, this is a show of hands vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that carries. On to delegations. I understand our delegate for today has withdrawn and is not coming forward before Public Works Committee. So we'll move on to our items for consideration. First on the agenda is item 9.1, which is the Red Light Camera Program 2026, new sites, PW 26013. May I please get a mover and seconder to put the report on the floor? Thank you, Councillor Crutch, seconded by Councillor Maureen Wilson. And the speakers list is open, and Acting Director of Transportation Mike Fields is available to respond. So first up, we have Councillor Crutch.
Thanks. My question is simple. I see that there's one here for Bay and Hunter. I understand the criteria through which it's all in the report in terms of how we choose the locations, why we're doing this now, the other locations that exist already, and what the programs are. What I don't know is when. That's my only question, is when do we think these red light cameras will be installed, and what will the duration of their installation be?
Mike Field, Acting Director of Transportation, through the chair to the councillor. Once we receive approval from committee and council, we'll move forward with the programming, the installation. It would happen this year. There's not a whole lot of civil work that needs to be done related to the installation of cameras apart from having some bases installed. So it's just a matter of making those arrangements with the vendor to have it put in and installed. But it will be within this year, and then it would operate there indefinitely until we determine that it no longer is needed or what have you.
Next up, we have Councillor Taddison. Oh, my apologies. It was Councillor Kassar.
Take that as a compliment. Thank you. Through you, Chair. A few questions for staff. First one would be, when an intersection is being considered, what is it that drives which direction of the intersection is going to be covered by the camera? And at any point, would it be possible, would staff consider having more than one direction in a troublesome intersection being susceptible or being covered by a red light camera? Through you, Chair.
Through the chair to the councillor, that's a really good question about not only how we choose intersections, but also within the intersection, how we're choosing which leg of the intersection is enforced. And the simple answer to that is we use the collision data that sits in behind it, and we're examining each leg of the intersection, and then we're selecting the leg that has the most highest benefit of having a camera operate it, where it's collecting the most number of angle-style collisions. While we haven't done it in Hamilton, it's possible that we may install even up to 4 red light cameras at one intersection covering the entire thing. We just haven't done that to date. But it's possible that that may happen at some point in the future based on what we're seeing with the data.
Okay, great. So confirmation, it's not a technical limitation, it's just a practice the city has. So satisfied with that answer. Next question, I get from doing the math in the report that it's about $80,000 in annual operating costs as shown. What's that cost for? Is it anything beyond just a contract with the provider? Is there more to an operating cost for red light camera?
The cost associated with, sorry, I just have to take my glasses off and on. The cost associated with the red light camera is mostly based on the vendor cost to operate the equipment. We don't own the red light cameras, but they're provided by a vendor. But we also have to pay some fees to MTO for license plate lookups, and then some information, or sorry, for service through City of Toronto at their joint processing center. But the mass majority of the costs do sit with the vendor. Those initial costs, which is around $80,000 in the first year, do decrease through that contract in subsequent years to a lesser amount. I think that's in recognition that there is some investment that's need to be made by the vendor in the very first year to acquire the equipment, install it, and all that sort of thing that goes along with it. Okay,
thank you for that. And third and final question, sort of getting into the heart of the matter here. $80,000 or whatever the cost ongoing is per year adds up over time, and there's many intersections where there's been a camera in for a long period of time. So that would accumulate costs that could otherwise have been, there's an opportunity cost to put in other engineering improvements because if it's still operating, there's still a risk. I'm sure the risk and the collisions are brought down, the injuries are brought down. But the report does say there's still potential rear-end collisions that might peak up because people are slamming on the brakes to avoid a red light, fine. So it seems to me that there's a latent problem of safety in intersection and that a camera doesn't entirely fix. So has staff considered, are they considering what could be put in as permanent engineering solutions or otherwise that would actually reduce all types of collisions along with the types trying to prevent it by a red light camera? Through you, Chair.
Through the chair to the councillor, the program is revenue positive, so the operational costs are covered by the fees that are collected by the cameras themselves. When a camera is initially installed, it collects the most amount of instances or infractions at the beginning, and then those tail off as people become cognizant that there's a red light camera at that intersection, but then they kind of tend to stabilize and they don't reduce any further than that indefinitely. We have in the past, and we do look at the safety performance of intersections. Red light camera is one of the tools in the toolboxes, and we have made through capital reconstruction or otherwise improvements to intersections where we've been able to remove the camera, where we've done those other improvements that have solved or dealt with the problems in a more fulsome manner. Just most recently on Wilson Street for the two-way conversion, there's a number of cameras that are operating there, and when we do the two-way conversion, they're not going to be there anymore because we're doing capital enhancements that will more considerably revise the intersection to perform even safer. So we do review it. Historically, we have kind of left the cameras as is in their operating locations, but under the new Vision Zero action plan, which is going to come to council this year, part of the equation is that we're going to return to the sites that we use red light cameras, and we're going to investigate more deeply on what other measures we can undertake at those locations that would essentially eliminate the need for a red light camera or reduce its effectiveness to the point that you're making, that making some enhancements on top of the red light camera that would improve safety for all road users at those locations.
Okay, thank you. Then just a concluding comment. I think we could probably get some agreement that we're not looking for revenue. We're just looking for a safer city, safer streets. So looking forward to hearing what comes forward in the Vision Zero action plan. Thanks, Chair.
This to Acting Director Mike Field. I'm hearing that it says that it reduces, red light cameras reduce the number of angle collisions, and it's something what Councillor Cassar just mentioned, while considering the potential increases in rear end collisions after installation of equipment. So my question is, are we seeing more rear ending accidents there? Can you give us some insight? Is that something that lasts, or does it go away after time?
Through the chair to the councillor, when we install a red light camera at an intersection, we see a large reduction in right angle collisions, which are very violent collisions. And we do see an increase in rear end collisions as folks are essentially braking faster. Those persist for quite some time. And I tried to get the statistics for this meeting, but I wasn't able to get it. But it's less frequent that a rear end collision results in injury or fatality compared to right angle. So it's a bit of a trade-off with a lot of safety measures that we do take. So that's a trade-off that we're making in this instance. But to answer your question, yes, reduction in right angle, increase in rear end, sustained through however long the camera stays at that location.
Okay, thank you, Acting Director. Does that in any way make us liable?
I think the city carries liability in all cases. I think that from a roadway safety perspective, we are making the conditions of the intersection far safer with it there compared to when it wasn't there.
Thanks, I can appreciate that. And just for my understanding, I'm getting that we collect the information and we ticket people that travel straight through a red light. Does it also capture people that flow through the red light and make a right-hand turn?
Through the chair to the councillor, that is a great question. No, if you're legally allowed to, or even illegally for that matter, if there's no turn on red restrictions, the camera will not trigger. It's only triggering for vehicles that drive straight through the intersection.
Okay, thanks. No more questions.
Thank you, Councillor Taddison. Next up, we have Councillor Jackson.
Thank you and good afternoon, Chair Nan. Through you to Acting Director Field, everyone knows I've been a big supporter of the red light camera program. The Premier's not touching this. Oh, forget it, that's rhetorical. Anyways, I've been a big supporter since they were incepted 25 years ago at the time of amalgamation. I hope I didn't mishear the Ward 12 councillor. Through you to Acting Director Field. Mike, you're not planning on potentially removing red light cameras. If you even theoretically maybe, I would hope there's consultation with the ward councillor and community. Could you further elaborate? And if I misheard that, I apologize. Through you, Chair Nan, please.
Through the chair to the councillor, the answer is yes, we are looking to remove them when we can, but we would not remove them without replacing them with some form of enhanced safety performance at the intersection. When we have removed red light cameras, which we haven't removed very many in the past, we have come to committee to seek permission to remove the camera at that location.
Could I ask a first step in advance of that you would at least consult, hopefully, Acting Director, with the ward councillor as well, to get both my office, in my case, my office's feedback on the 4 that I have along Upper Gauge, as well as the community's feedback, because right now, my community overwhelmingly appreciates the law-abiding motorists, appreciate the 4 cameras along Upper Gauge, and actually want a few more. So can I just ensure that there'll be consultation in advance of your report coming forward if hypothetically it's for removal? Through you, Chair Nan, please.
Through the chair to the councillor, most certainly we would have that conversation ahead of time when we're doing the capital planning for the reconstruction. It's unlikely that we would just remove a camera without doing anything else. So we would go through a process which would include some consultation prior to that happening.
Terrific, Acting Director. Thank you. Acting Director, there must be still an outstanding list. I didn't see it in your report unless I missed it. So can I presume that there's still the outstanding list? And do you think you'll be possibly coming forward with a further report for additional locations of recommendation before this term of council is over? Through you, Chair Nan.
Through the chair to the councillor, Really good question, and we often receive requests from the public about having red light cameras at a signalized intersection. We have completed the assessment of every single signalized intersection in the city, and we have rated that on a priority order. What's been happening is we've been implementing 5 cameras a year, and we've been picking off the top 5 locations from that prioritized list. So that's going to continue. This is the 5 that we're installing this year, and then we would come back in theory to next year for council for the next 5.
Terrific. Okay, so no further report in all likelihood before this term of council is over. And I would imagine if last time I saw it, Mike, about a year ago, I think you, if I recall, maybe still had about 50, 60 locations on the outstanding list. First of all, confirm that number in general. And number 2, last question. Again, I know that you do your warrants professionally, but I believe the department's also been open-minded. If community concerns come forward via petition, at least the petition is received by your department and maybe taken into consideration as well. Those last 2 questions, Chair Nan, please, to the acting director.
Through the chair to the councillor, right now we have 51 red light cameras installed with another one that's just under progress of being installed. This will bring us to just shy of 60 cameras, 57, once we finish the installation of these. And then we do have every single signalized intersection on a list. And I can't recall how many signalized intersections we have in the city, 270 or some odd. So everyone is on the list and it's ranked in order of priority, and we would just move through that list as time goes on. In terms of petitioning or advocacy of red light cameras, we definitely are welcome to receive that kind of information. It's just a matter of us factoring that into our selection based on the pre-existing prioritization, which is more of an evidence-based process based on collision data. Also within the report, though, which is something that's been requested by committee in the past, was inserting an equity factor within the decision-making criteria, and that is something that we're working on in integrating our existing decision-making processes. So that may alter the prioritization of the list as we embed that kind of thinking within our the way that we're selecting sites and ranking them.
Thanks for all your answers, Acting Director. Equity, fine, but not, hopefully, in my opinion, at the expense of locations that have been on the list for quite a while. Thank you, Chair Nan.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Next up, we have Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the Acting Director, I know we've had some conversation here around safety and with the rear-end accidents, but there's also, I've noticed with some of these long-standing intersections where we have the red light cameras, there's been a behavioral change in the sense that people are starting to really gun their cars, accelerate it through the lights to get through that intersection before they get snapped on the camera. And so do you have any data on that, or any thoughts that you might have folks might have noticed that as well, just some observations? I'm not sure exactly how it's tracked, but I'm interested in your thoughts on it.
Through the chair to the councillor, the increase in rear-end collisions is indicative of people's behavioral change as they know that there's something at that intersection. They're either stopping short or accelerating through the intersection as a result of it. However, we do see a marked improvement from a road safety perspective from the cameras. That is a bigger trade-off than increasing those number of less inconsequential collisions. Those right-angle collisions are reduced greatly. Those are the ones that more often than not result in someone being injured or killed. But for sure, people react to having red light cameras at an intersection by either stopping short or accelerating through it.
Thank you. And through you, Chair. So it sounds like there's really no way of capturing those people who accelerate through the lights and just the impact that has other than tracking accidents. Like there's no way of tracking that with the technology we have or anything like that?
Through the chair, no, the red light camera would not capture those instances unless that person accelerating through it is accelerating through on a red light, then they would be captured.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
We have Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. I've got a question about King Street and Green Road, Acting Director, and I'll get to that in a second, but I just want to follow up on just some clarification, additional clarification on the conversation that you were having with Councillor Tattison with regards to turning right on a red light. That kind of supposes a full and complete stop before they enter, and I think, is there a term referred to as the box? Before you enter the box, you must come to a complete stop and then proceed on the red turn. Anything that happens where a motorist is rolling through that intersection, not making the complete stop before they enter the box, that will result in a fine. I just want to make sure that that's clarified.
Correct. If you are illegally going through that intersection, it's highly likely that it's going to trigger the camera. If you come to a complete and full stop and you make your turn, then you're at not risk at receiving a infraction.
That's what I thought. So thank you for the clarification. Going back to then King Street, the Green Road. I know this was on the list from last year. It sounds like there's a reorientation taking place on the placement of the camera based on the setup of that intersection. It's in a bit of a bend, so I understand where you're coming from and not being able to implement it as originally planned. Really quickly, just looking for a timeline on your staff's best thoughts in terms of how long, kind of knowing that we're already a year later and still waiting for the installation of something at that intersection. How much longer do we have to wait to get something put in?
Through the chair to the councillor, for the few locations where we're asking approval to change the orientation, being that those locations were already approved, we just through the process of looking at the details of installing them have made some adjustments. Those are the ones which will be done first before the additional new ones. So they would be prioritized. So based on approval today, if we get approval today and then through council, then we would move forward with the installation through the contractor. And those wouldn't be installed in the winter. So we would look to begin installations with the vendor in the springtime when construction season allows.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up, we have Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Acting Director Field, just so I understand, the report talks about a mandate that you received for 5 new locations. Has that mandate changed over the years, or was that mandate of 5 established perhaps at the genesis of red light cameras? Can you reach back and help me understand through the chair?
Through the chair to the councillor, the 5 additional is part of the Vision Zero action plan. So that would have been established in 2019. And with the new Vision Zero action plan, we are, without spilling the beans on those plans before it comes to Public Works, but we're looking at advancing the program even further and looking at existing locations and how we can do more to those locations to even reduce red light running that has stabilized despite having cameras there through other interventions. So the 5 a year has been, was established in 2019 and sustained since then.
So if I could, through the chair, repeat that back. Established in 2019 because of the permissions and the practice set out in the first Vision Zero. That is going to be revisited as part of the renewed Vision Zero, which may inform additional moving the 5 and or informing that more severe, positively, severe installations may be required if we're finding, say, a red light camera is just, again, we're learning, it's just not sufficient enough because of the dangers posed by that particular intersection. Did I summarize that through the chair?
Through the chair, you did. The other factor in that is that we're constantly reassessing the collision data as years go on. And based on a number of factors, there may be an intersection that moves its way up higher on the list that was never high on the list before because of changes within the transportation network. So we're always making sure that that list doesn't maintain as a static list, that it's updated based on our ongoing analysis of collisions. The we will see a continued use of red light cameras across the city where we believe that they have the most benefit. But kind of building on the whole premise of Vision Zero in the first place is to eliminate injury and fatal collisions. We want to enhance it even further by really digging down in those locations and coming up with different ways to solve the issues that exist at intersections such as angle collisions or red light running and those sorts of things.
Thank you. So just one last question for me then. So do you have a waiting list then, like of candidates? And that, again, going back to the 5, that's informed by policy and perhaps financial, but it would if we didn't have a renewed Vision Zero coming, that 5 could easily be, given the situation in the city, could easily be 10. But you're limited to 5.
Through the chair, yes, it could be more, it could be less. The red light camera, what's happened over time since we've had this program for 25 years plus is that the most egregious locations in the city where red light running has occurred have a camera there already. So what's left on the list are intersections where there's less prevalence of an issue with red light running. And in those cases, there may be other opportunities other than a red light camera to deal with those issues, which is what we're looking at doing through the Vision Zero program. But yeah, to your question, we could have less, we could have more, but we've been driving the quantity based on the Vision Zero action plan and how that was constructed.
Thank you. And somewhat out of the scope of this, I do recall, I think last week during the budget deliberations, the two-way conversion of Main and LRT, in fact, will address a longstanding cancerous blemish on this city, which will finally address King and Dundurn and Main and Dundurn. And so we'll be able to, can we reuse those cameras or just take them out of commission?
Through the chair to the councillor, we will see a removal of a number of red light cameras through Main Street two-way and through LRT construction, which is a really good news story because that's dealing with King and Dundurn, Main and Dundurn, which are the two intersections that have the highest number of red light running and have ranked high on the frequency of collisions for a long time. So that's going to—
For 60 years, Mike.
For 60 years, maybe longer. So that will help greatly. So we're going to remove those from those locations. When a camera is removed, it's removed. If we want to put a camera in a different location, it's not moving that camera from that location to a different one. We're using newer technology with red light cameras as well now. If you're familiar with the older style red light cameras, there's two poles. There's one with a camera and there's one with another post that looks like a camera too. The new ones use radar technology, so there's just one camera, one post. So it wouldn't make sense to take those old red light cameras out of those locations and put them somewhere else too. So in essence, we wouldn't remove that physically and move it to a new spot, but that doesn't mean that there's not an opportunity to say we want to maintain 57 cameras in the city, so let's find locations for those ones that are being removed and go and put them at a different location, which we have done in the past.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I'll pass the chair on to Councillor Kassar. Had one follow-up question, and that was in relation to, through you, the decommissioned sites. So clearly in the report it says the ones from Wilson Street and Councillor Jackson, yes, the public consultation and consultation with the councillor's office occurred well in advance of the Wilson Street reconstruction project, where staff identified those RLCs would be coming out. And gives an opportunity, I think, for those to be moved to different sites. But for the decommissioned sites, so I think Dundurn's a great example. So when we get to the part of Main Street two-way conversion and those built-in safety roadway enhancements to address the safety needs of our community and visitors at those intersections and along Main Street, is there an opportunity to use the existing infrastructure for other purposes? For example, I believe it was the city of Brampton. that one. The city of Brampton recently moved direction to their team, their staff team, to look at decimal triggered cameras. So more from that obscene noise factor that we're constantly throughout the city getting complaints about in our neighborhoods. Is there any opportunity to do that, and would staff need direction to explore that as well?
Through the chair to the councillor, physically what's remaining after red light camera is removed is a pole base and some wiring, and that's about it. Typically during reconstruction, that infrastructure is removed because it's in the way of the new infrastructure. But in theory, if that were to remain, we could repurpose it for something else. Right now, we haven't used technology that's detecting loud mufflers and that sort of thing within the city. But it's a possibility that we could. There's nothing within the Highway Traffic Act that we could act on that information, but it would be more of data collecting than anything else. But with that, there's other technology that we could attach to a city streetlight or a traffic pole that would essentially do the same thing. That's more maybe plug and play on adding on to existing infrastructure as opposed to having dedicated pole and wiring infrastructure for something like that.
Thank you for that clarity. I'll take back the chair. No further speakers on this report. So on to the recommendations. It's been already moved and seconded, right, Sal? Yep. Okay. Committee members, if you could please vote electronically. And welcome to Councillor Spadafora. Sorry, I meant to acknowledge you were in the room earlier. It's up, but it's grayed out. So, yep, thumbs up. Anybody else need to do a manual vote? Okay. Thanks, that carries. On to 9.2. This is Confederation Beach Park Management Agreement Renewal, PW 26012. Committee members, before we move and second this, I might need to request whether or not folks want to go in camera for the portion of the item that's there. If there is anybody, we'd have to defer the report. So just wanted to do, I see a lot of not, okay, good, ready to roll. So moved by Councillor Francis, seconded by Councillor Huang. Thank you both. And yeah, open for discussion on the report. Councillor Francis.
Thank you, Chair Nan. In 2024, the city commenced a strategic review to investigate opportunities for the redevelopment of Wild Waterworks site and the surrounding lands within Confederation Beach Park. I understand the strategic review will come forward in a staff report soon. I'm hearing with this report here, Q1 or Q2 of this year, with findings and recommendations on a potential private-public partnership. My question, and this is my only question, if we approve this today, does this hinder our ability to pivot to that potential upcoming direction? Through you, Chair.
Through the chair, Cynthia Graham, Director of Environmental Services. No, this agreement is the standard operating agreement. That is just the renewal of the relationship with the Hamilton Conservation Authority to manage and maintain the lands at Confederation Beach Park. Historically, they assisted us with the operation all the way past and including the new sports park. Previously, we did remove the sports park lands from that management agreement. So the real tangible update of this agreement is just standard language included in the agreement that if there were additional lands that the city wanted to take on for maintenance, that was a provision within this agreement, but all of the other standard conditions remain.
Excellent. Thanks, Chair. And that's all I've got, but I'm very supportive of this direction at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no other speakers on the list, so it's been moved and seconded before committee for electronic vote. Councillor Pauls, you can also give a thumbs up. Is that okay? Yep, okay. Thumbs up from Councillor Pauls. And that carries. On to 9.3, which is February 2026 intersection control list, PW 26001B. Mover and seconder, thank you, Councillor Crutch. Seconder, Councillor Kassar. And speakers list is open. First up, we have Councillor Crutch.
Thank you. On the theme of when, I'm just asking the same question. I think this is just when these things happen, and then I have a question about why.
Through the chair to the councillor, the one question will be nearly immediately after approval happens. We will install it. Why? In the instance of the...
Oh, no, sorry, I wanted to form the why question. I apologize. Why was really a question for me to ask specifically through the chair. When we talk about stop signs and the use of stop signs, what I've heard from public works staff of the city in the last several years has been that we are kind of moving away from stop signs as an intersection control measure because they tend to be not always very effective and so on. And so when we have an intersection control that's come up and the intervention is a stop sign, I just ask that question to myself. Does that mean we maybe should have made a road design change? Is this what we just do here? Is it that we're transitioning eventually away from this? Because if we put a stop sign in and the stop sign is ineffective, then we have to put a speed cushion or a pinch or something else to happen. So why don't we just start there?
Through the chair to the councillor, in the instance of the Ward 2 location, based on a review, there was a missing stop sign at an existing intersection that had no stop controls. So you're correct, we try to avoid using stop signs where it doesn't provide the benefit that we want. But in this instance, through review, we identified that there's missing stop controls at this particular intersection, and that's why a stop sign is being installed at this particular one.
And so if I understand what you're saying correctly is we would never really remove stop signs, but we might add additional things to help with traffic calming. This one's just missing one, so we're putting it in there. As it happens, there's a speed cushion coming to the street, I believe anyways, but I just wanted a clarification. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. There's no further speakers, so it's been moved and seconded before committee for electronic vote. Thumbs up from Councillor Pauls. And that carries on to 9.4, increase to capital project 5302-183100, inflationary and tariff impacts, PW 26021. Could I get a mover and seconder to put the report on the floor? Thank you, Councillor Taddison, seconded by Councillor Maureen Wilson. Speakers list is open. First up, we have Councillor Kassar.
Thanks, Chair Nan. I just had some clarification questions, which I've shared with staff ahead of time. If I understand what I'm reading in the report, we had an approval in October 2025 for bus purchases, thumbs up. And since then, the cost has gone from roughly 1.46 million to 1.8 million, which, if I did the math correctly, is 23% in just a few short months. Could you elaborate on that through you, Chair, just on the inflation and the tariff parts of that? Because it's just a large number for a very short period of time, through you.
Through the chair, Nancy Purser, Director of Transit. Thank you for the question. This is a cumulative increase. We also earlier this summer renewed our agreement with Metrolinx for the transit initiative and to buy from them. We haven't purchased through this program for 3 years, so until we were part of the program again, we've not had full insight into all of the pricing increases that have happened. We've expected about a 3%, and it's been a 4 to 5% increase on an annual basis. So that has now been accumulated, plus the addition of the tariffs that have been added on this year.
Okay, thank you. That helps. Next question is just from page 3 of the report under reserve adequacy. So it mentions here recent funding stream from ICIP, the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, and that allows the replacement of buses to be purchased at 27 cents on the dollar. So if I interpret that correctly, then we're paying, most of it's covered by the fund, and what's hitting the municipality is 27% of the 1.8 million, or can you just elaborate how much we're actually paying?
Through the chair, the ISIP program has allowed us to buy previous buses at 27 cents, which has allowed funds to remain in the reserve. So this purchase is using 100% reserves, not ISIP funding, but there is sufficient reserves available because of previous ISIP purchases. That has made the reserve sufficient. This purchase will allow us to access the new funding, the Canada Public Transit funding of $6.2 million, which will then also go back into the reserve.
Okay,
It's not levy funded, it's all funded from the reserve.
gotcha. Okay, thank you for clarifying that, because I did misinterpret that. Appreciate that. Not levy funded. And so then, in terms of reserves, that funding is coming from those monies and not from the levy, so we don't need through the budget in this year, next year, to be having tax levy funded reserves through you?
Through the chair, we have recognized that with a 12-year life cycle, there is a need to continue to increase the reserve for CPI. So every year, as part of our regular order of business with the budget, we do add an inflationary component into the reserve.
Okay, thank you. Then last question, just changing gears a little bit. Alternative B, just a curiosity question, not suggesting anything to do with Alternative B. Talks about the optimal life cycle of being 12 years, which the director just mentioned. I'm just curious, I guess that's because beyond that point, maintenance cost becomes more costly than actually purchasing new. I get that, makes sense. Just curious when that analysis was done, and are we confident that logic still holds with updates in technology or other factors? Is 12 years still the right number through you?
Through the chair, I will start, and if I don't have all the answers, I have our maintenance managers here. We did this analysis, from what we can tell, in around 2010. It was done at that time to move from 18-year life cycle to a 12-year life cycle. Most of that had to do with midlife refurbishing of the engines, which happened at 6 years and then again at 12 years. And so the cost benefit kind of settled around, based on consultants' work, at 12 years. Now we've moved into our CNG fleet that is almost entirely CNG now. Those tanks require recertification at 15 years, which is an additional cost, and sometimes it takes longer for a bus to arrive than anticipated. And so we would incur that cost. If the bus was delayed even by 2 months, we would have to get it recertified.
Okay, so just to confirm then, the analysis for 12 years was done in 2010. We haven't done it since then. Are we still confident that 12 years is correct, notwithstanding what I just heard about the CNG, but was that technology change? Does it make it lower? Is there any reason to believe it should be a different time frame?
So yes, through the chair, we are confident that the 12-year life cycle is the most cost-effective time frame for the bus life cycle.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Next up, we have Councillor Taddison.
Hi, I'm also curious about the alternative of increasing the life cycle of buses. And I just heard from you and from the report that basically it's 12 years. Is mileage factored into that, and say other factors like a bus that doesn't go up and down the escarpment, just stays on the mountain, flat surface? Are any of those factored in?
Through the chair, I'll start, and then I'm going to hand it over to my maintenance manager. Right now, given that we have one facility, many of our buses go up and down the mountain every day. But I will hand it over to Jeff Poljanski, Manager of Fleet Maintenance, to give the details.
Nice. Thank you, Nancy. I'm Jeff Poljanski, Manager of Fleet Maintenance. So yes, the mileage is factored into the life cycle cost. Our fleet rotates on routes. It's not fixed routes. So they all cycle through up and down the mountain and around everywhere in Hamilton.
Okay, thanks for that answer. Say a bus requires extensive work before the end of life. Say it gets a new transmission or a new engine, and we repair it at our cost, I guess. Does that extend the lifetime of that bus, or does it still get optioned out after 12 years?
Through the chair. What we try to do is we try to predict about an midlife refurbishment, which is about 600,000 kilometers, somewhere in around there, which puts us at about the 6-7 year mark. So to answer your question, yes, if it would need a transmission, we would have to evaluate the remaining life cycle and deem if it's required. We do run a spare ratio, so if it happened within 6 months, maybe we wouldn't put a transmission in it. We'd pull it from service and run it in our BO count until the new bus arrives. If we haven't purchased it and it's 1.5 years, 2 years out, then yes, we would replace the transmission, and then we'd bump that one to the back of the line. So when the new buses arrive, that would be the last one to get replaced.
Okay, final question then. Are there any buses that are in that situation where we could extend their lifetime so that we don't have to purchase, say, one more bus?
Through the chair, I would have to say that there has to be some in that point right now, because we are not targeting a 12-year life cycle as in day for day. We do extend into about the 12, 13-year life cycle, so we do have some buses that have had an engine replacement or a transmission replacement in the last year or so.
Okay, thanks. No further questions.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up, Councillor Bee.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, I had also emailed a question in advance, but then a new one popped into my head, so sorry. I'm trying to wrap my head around, we're here to discuss the impact of the tariff regime on the cost of the buses. By memory, it serves me, if my memory serves me correctly, the bulk of our fleet is comprised of New Flyers and Nova buses. New Flyers in Manitoba, Nova buses in Quebec. So I'm trying to, and I know there's movements and parts, and I think that there's pre-assembly on one side of the border and post-assembly on the other side of the border, and they move back and forth all throughout. But somebody reasonably could be watching this and go, well, wait a second, we're buying Canadian, in quotation, buses. Why and what is the actual tariff impact? Is there any way of just at a real Coles Notes version, unpacking exactly what's at play here that's led to these pricing increases, be it that they are all from Canadian manufacturers?
Through the chair, so you are correct. They are Canadian built. Through Metrolinx's contract, there is a clause that has to be met to have a certain amount of Canadian manufacturing in the vehicle. However, all the components are sourced throughout North America, so they do travel across. I do not have any specifics, nor does most of the industry. This was brought up at QTRIC as a concern from the OEMs about the amount of materials, the metals, the materials in each component that actually drive the bus. It's not just the steel frame. It is every little nuance of every movement of each piece getting a bit of a tariff. So we do not have the exact details to be able to drill into everything, but we do know that we are in the 18% range now of a vehicle.
Thank you for that. So it's not that there's any one particular thing that you can point to that said this is causing the price increases. Just tariffs in general have led to a change in the economic climate, which has added that 18% to the current price, if I have that correctly.
Through the chair, you do have that correct. I just wanted to make one correction. Sorry, it's about 12%. It's not actually 18%.
12, 18, it still sucks, whatever it is, I'll tell you that. Okay, so then going back to the question that I'd circulated earlier, we are potentially looking at a postponement, deferral of some of the implementation of HSR Next. So as we're renewing the fleet, I'm wondering how much of this purchase might be geared towards the HSR Next implementation, and just to kind of simplify it, are we purchasing buses that won't necessarily have drivers to drive them if the deferral takes place? Through you, Chair.
Through the chair, this purchase is strictly replacement buses. So they arrive, 18 buses arrive, 18 buses come off the road. This is not an HSR Next expansion order. Should we move ahead with that order and it continues, HSR Next continues to get deferred, future replacement buses will not be purchased, and these ones would be used as those replacements to balance the fleet back out.
Okay, so this is strictly dealing with the current fleet, the current strategy, current program. This doesn't have any bearing on any changes to the HSR Next implementation then?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Beatty. Next up, Councillor Point.
Thank you. I have two questions. I'd like further clarification on the financial considerations section of this report. The requested increase of 6.1 million is coming out of an HSR vehicle replacement reserve account, which I think that is what we would normally do anyway. We just didn't really account for the 12 or 18% increase in the tariffs. So that I understand. But I don't understand the administratively part because of the whole creating a project ID, which actually means that you have to create a whole new account. But isn't this what the normal practice is anyway, that we would have just taken money out of the reserve anyway? So where does this, I don't understand how we have a Canada Public Transit Fund. We also have an ISIP. We have to create a new project ID on something that I think this is the current and existing practice. So I don't understand that part.
Through the chair, I didn't either at first. So what we've done here is the original capital project that was presented to council had ISIP as its funding source. We are not allowed to stack funding. And this order is the first order that will attract Canada public transit funds. And so we need to basically in the background, recreate it, give it a new project ID with funding 100% out of the reserve in order to present that for the funding. We will use future replacements purchases to maximize the ISIP funding in other capital projects. It's strictly administrative, and it's just because funding is not allowed to be stacked. And this original purchase project was approved with ISIP funding. So we just need to make that change.
I see, okay. Then I'd like to go down back to alternative B. I'd like to understand what is the cost benefit of essentially extending the use of our existing buses without potentially going into the reserve account. So I wonder, could you give me the numbers on this? Like, it helps me make a better decision as to whether we should pull money out of a $6.1 million or is it only 1.2 million to just keep it running for a year or so?
Through the chair, I'm going to start, and then I will hand it over to Jeff. There's the cost of capital that's not considered. So if we don't buy today, the price CPI will continue to go up. So we do have that impact as additional costs. And then there are additional maintenance costs per bus that could be incurred. So I'll hand that over to Jeff.
Thank you. Through the chair, I just wanted to point out one thing is if the approval today allows us to release a PO and the vendor is going to, once they get the PO, they're telling us it's 18 to 24 months to receive a bus. So if we're at the 12-year life cycle right now, we are already going to be getting close to that 14-year life cycle by the time we see the new vehicles come in. We do not have an actual dollar value of what the difference would be. We're targeting everything to be, hopefully we don't have to put a transmission in it. Hopefully we don't have to put another engine in it. We do know that the tanks need to be certified at 15 years. We know we have full warranty on the frames for 14 years from the vendor. So when we get into that critical point, if we hit that tipping scale, they could be unpredicted costs that we don't usually incur.
Okay, so I think that, again, absent of those numbers, it's really hard for me to make a genuine decision because what if, I understand, 12 to 14 months out, I get it, we're gonna be at a 14-year life cycle for each of these buses, but you also said in the early days it was an 18-year life cycle. I also recognize that federally, we are going to have CUSMA talks, so trade talks that will happen. The auto industry is already in some of that turmoil. So I think I really want to understand how much is the cost of a transmission? Because it could be, the cost of a transmission could be far less than the 18 million or the 1.8 million per bus. There's a lot of numbers on this report, so you get my point, is that versus net new, is the maintenance and the transmission costs going to be less, even if it is pushing out all of the life cycle by, say, another 18 months? So again, I don't have those numbers to make the cost-benefit analysis. So if you can help me understand that a little bit more.
So through the chair, we don't have those numbers. We haven't had a longer life cycle in a number of years. So historically, those numbers are not available. We would have to go away and do some calculations. This purchase has been tagged to the Canadian Public Transit funding, which is $6.2 million. So we put in this order. When we get in, we'll work with the vendor to invoice us and we'll be able to collect on those funds. If we defer this order, we leave $6.2 million on the table. We won't be able to collect on that money.
I need to go on for a second time, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, over to Councillor Cooper, and then Councillor Huang, you're indicating you want to come back on. And so hopefully folks heard that last piece from the director, right? That it is tied to the CPTF funding that's currently on the table.
That's okay. Thank you, Chair. Through you, so just so I understand this, we're saying that the cost increase is related to tariffs. So when we think about this, the Trump tariffs are on goods produced in Canada, sold in the U.S. So these are goods produced in the U.S., sold in Canada, because we're, of course, in Canada buying a bus from the U.S. And various parts. So this is actually, this is actually a tariff by the Canadian government that's driving up our costs by $6 million. Is that correct?
Through the chair, I can't answer that with certainty. We're in the hands of the vendor who's telling us, what their cost increases are driving them. They're telling us it's tariffs. If it's the Canadian government that's causing it or the Trump government that's causing it, it's being pushed onto us regardless at this point.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I know. I just find it odd because unless we're in the U.S. buying things, the Trump tariff wouldn't affect us. It would be our own Canadian government affecting us. And I see some offsets here by the Canadian government. And there's absolutely nothing that the Canadian government is putting in place to offset this cost that's being downloaded on the municipalities by our federal government to make these things more affordable. There's no programs or anything like that in place that you're aware of right now? Through you, Chair?
Through the chair, none have presented themselves at this point.
Okay. I just find it interesting. The federal government's coming forward with billions of dollars for purchasing things like this, and they're driving up our costs. So thank you, Chair.
Councillor Huang.
Thank you. I appreciate Director's last comment, to me anyway, about how this is potentially a $6.2 million opportunity that and because administratively, the minute that we do it administratively, we have access to that $6.2 million. So I'm very, very mindful of that particular point. And I definitely don't want us to miss out on any opportunity to take potential program dollars from other orders of government. But I am genuinely still curious about why we haven't done this level of analysis when it comes to what is the cost benefit for, say, a new transmission versus a 16-year lifespan. What are the, like, I wonder if there's any opportunity for staff to go back and do that level of research to help us, to help inform us, because at this point it is all new and no numbers to justify life cycle, refresh, and all of that stuff. So if,
Through the chair, I understand this is an opportunity for improvement. I saw it as I wrote all these reports, right? That there's got to be something that we can do differently. To do this justice, as we did the first time, we had a consultant support us through this, to get a consultant on board and get that work done. So it is, it covers all the pieces, will take time, and again, we'll lose the window. I don't want to put you in a corner. I really don't. That's not what I'm trying to do. This is the situation we're in right now.
I'm thankful for that comment. Chair, I think that for me, I'm supportive of this direction moving forward. However, I would like to potentially put a motion forward at some future date for us to have that cost-benefit analysis on essentially extending the life of our existing assets. Because we have these assets, we pay a lot of money for them, and it sounds like Councillor Tattison wants to second on this one. But this will be according to how Director Purser allocates time. Ideally, if we can use this as a professional development opportunity and not hire a consultant, that would be awesome. So I need a little time to send some to send some wording over to LC McIntosh, but the intention of my motion is at some time that director finds available, that ideally professional development for existing staff to do the cost benefit analysis on the extension of our existing HSR assets.
Thank you. Councillor Huang, I'll request that you bring that as a motion to the next Public Works Committee meeting. I really want to encourage you to have a meeting with the director and the general manager prior to putting forward a motion to committee so that we can all deliberate it based on some insight that you will receive as the motion
Fair.
maker.
Thank you
Is
so
that
much,
fair?
Chair.
Thank you
Yes.
so much. Appreciate that. That exhausts our speakers list. It's been moved and seconded and before committee for electronic vote. That's a thumbs up from Councillor Pauls.
Councillor Spadafora?
Thumbs up from Councillor Spadafora. And that carries with one nay. On to 9.5, amendments to the outstanding business list. May I please have a mover and seconder? Moved by anyone? Councillor Cassar, seconded by Councillor Francis. Any discussion on the OBL items? Seeing none, then it is before committee for vote. That carries on to motions. First up, we have 10.1, public Wi-Fi expansion in Ward 2 Parks. Over to you, Councillor Crutch.
Thank you very much. It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Huang. It's been on the agenda for a while, so I won't read it out verbatim. But I'll just summarize a couple of things. Thanks first to Cyrus Tarani for helping with this and Cynthia Graham for helping with this. For those who don't already know, we have Wi-Fi in Ward 2 parks, some Ward 2 parks already. But some of the major parks or parks where there's only one park in a neighborhood are missing. As you all probably know also, if you look at this census data from 2021, socioeconomically speaking, the average household income here is quite low, and there's lots of folks who don't have internet access. And so this is both to assist with that, but also give a chance for people to work outdoors and work in the park without having to incur costs to do so. I think right now Corktown Park is the biggest park where we do have Wi-Fi. This is going to expand that Wi-Fi to Bayfront Park, Carter Park, Central Park, Eastwood Park, and Durand Park. And it's being paid for from the Ward 2 Capital Reserve Fund. And there's an ongoing capital cost of operational cost of $5,000 a year. This is a pilot to see the effectiveness of this. I don't know all the criteria for evaluating the pilot. I don't know exactly what the outcome will be with respect to how it will be brought back here. But Cyrus Training could probably speak to that, or maybe GM Kennedy, in terms of how that gets evaluated. But hoping for your support. Thanks.
Next up, we have Councillor Maureen Wilson.
Thank you. I support the motion, but I think the councillor just answered my questions. I was interested in learning more about a pilot for what, to inform what purpose and against what criteria. And if there is someone present from IT, I have a question, just if you could remind me, what is our policy with respect to public Wi-Fi, through the chair?
I'm happy to take that question if that's
Apparently that's
Franny.
Cyrus, but-
Acting CIO, apologies for the shadow. My office is very backlit. That's why I'm in the dark. So just some history here for council, if it makes sense. We originally had reached out for a grant for the Healthy Safe Communities Group. And we were through the government, and we had received an initial grant that we used to outfit 9 public spaces with Wi-Fi. At that time, we had done sort of an evaluation in conjunction with Health and Safe Communities around needs, looking at marginalization index and looking at average income, and also where there's technical feasibility. So I will say that from a formal process, we don't have a formalized assessment process. I would say documented as it relates to selection criteria, other than that we know the majority of the parks that floated to the top were in wards that have larger marginalization and lower average incomes versus maybe, say, other areas of the city that don't face those same challenges. In terms of the pilot perspective on this, what we've done in the past is look at utilization to help determine how successful was the uptake of the technology to determine justification for continued use. And the way it was structured, because we have a challenge with IT equipment that it tends to only last 5 or 6 years before we need to refresh it. It's not quite the same as a sidewalk or a piece of physical infrastructure that may have a longer life cycle asset. The only way to treat this going forward using ward discretionary capital was to treat it as a pilot, and we would use that utilization metrics to determine if this is something that would exceed past the 5-year cycle with just current funding through this motion would support, at least for the one-time investment.
Thank you. Through the chair, did I hear Chief Digital Officer say we have 9 parks at present that offer free Wi-Fi?
Correct. It might be a little bit more. I think it's 11, but we were funded for 9 previously when we rolled them out through a federal grant program.
Okay. So I am interested because there seems to be a growing acknowledgement, and we hear this when we're talking about rural broadband, that the ability to gain access to digital information is part of our requirement, I think, to assist in our exercise of citizenship. I'm so attentive that you have to hear me twice in an echo form. The budget last week wasn't enough. You've got to hear me now in an echo form. So if I heard you correctly, this was federally funded. It was 9. We have 9 to start. We don't quite yet have an evaluation that will assess this, and we don't have a city funding source outside of ward discretionary dollars to fund this, if I heard that all correctly.
Yeah, I think so. I think this was Councillor Cretch brought this motion forward in interest in expanding availability for parks that he identified, and we worked with him to identify the costs to implement that. That's why it's coming forward through ward discretionary funding asks. The 9 were as part of our initial previous work that we tried to start to expand this out. I will just note for the public record, I believe we have 72 locations around the city that provide Wi-Fi access. That would include senior center, rec centers, arenas, and other public buildings that also offer guests Wi-Fi, but those are unique. Those are mostly interior. It would be the parks and public spaces. That's a new area for us that we typically haven't ventured into prior to that funding grant that we received from the government that initiated the first 9 spots, or 9 locations, plus 2 that we had, and then this additional expansion through the motion coming forward from the council.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. That exhausts our speakers list. And it's been duly moved and seconded. Over to you all for electronic vote. That carries. On to next motion, 10.2, removal and replacement of a city-owned linden tree at 28 Battlefield Drive in Stony Creek. Over to you, Councillor Francis.
Thank you, Chair Nan. That's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Tom Jackson. Removal and replacement of city-owned linden tree at 28 Battlefield Drive, Stony Creek in Ward 5. Whereas city trees are the responsibility of the City of Hamilton as per the Municipal Act, and protection and maintenance are the responsibility of the Forestry and Horticulture section. Whereas there is a large mature linden tree located at the public right-of-way in front of 28 Battlefield Drive, Stony Creek. Whereas the linden tree was inspected by forestry staff in September 2025 and subsequently pruned in December 2025 due to repeated large branch failures and ongoing safety concerns. Whereas the International Society of I don't even know how to pronounce that word.
Are you okay?
Arboriculture.
Despite the technical assessment, the trees in the history repeated large branch failures over the extended period, both before and after trimming, creating significant safety concerns for residents, pedestrians, and vehicles. Whereas the property owner has indicated that family members regularly use the sidewalk and front yard area beneath the tree and has expressed concern that the further branch failures could result in serious injury. Whereas the property owner has indicated a strong support for urban trees, but believes his particular tree is in decline, posing an ongoing safety risk, and requests a new city-owned tree in its place. Therefore, be it resolved, A, that forestry staff be directed to remove the city-owned linden tree located at 28 Battlefield Drive, Stony Creek due to ongoing and repeated safety concerns, and to plant a suitable replacement city-owned tree at or near the same location, and B, that the forestry staff be directed to waive all tree removal permit fees and loss of canopy fees associated with the removal of the linden tree, and to fund all associated removal and replacement costs through the forestry section operating budget. And I'll just speak to this really briefly. I know that Delegate Rich DiPietro could not attend today, according to his correspondence. And I am glad that he was able to share his very concerning testimony in detail that's on the agenda here. Needless to say, the 28 Battlefield has a very dangerous tree on his front lawn, and it's only a matter of time before someone gets seriously hurt due to the falling branches. That's why I've brought this here. It's a serious safety concern, and we've heard from the resident in the correspondence. He's worried about the safety of his family, and I agree with him. I've personally visited dozens of trees that residents are concerned about throughout my ward over the past few years, and most often, trimming will solve that problem, and it's typically a nuisance issue. This does not fit into that nuisance category, unfortunately, and I wish that it did. This tree is continually dropping large branches both before and after the trimming, and I've witnessed these branch failures with my own eyes both before and after the trimming. So I completely sympathize with the residents' concern for his health and their family's health and safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Francis. Arboriculture? There you go. On to Councillor Taddison.
So I see this as a safety issue. I have about 10 large linden trees on my very own property. I've always called them basswoods. It's a hardwood tree, but the wood is very soft. Basically, when they get to a certain age, big branches just start to fall. Every year I take out my chainsaw and I cut up 7, 8 very large branches off my lawn that have fallen to the ground as a result of wind, rain, snow, or simply insects and age. So that's almost 1 branch per tree per year. So for me as a principal, it was always safety first. When you have an identifiable risk, it should be removed. I will always vote for the safety of families. It would be horrendous to see a tree branch fall on somebody or damage property that could have been taken down. So with this, we now have a hazard that's identified and we can rectify it. I think, in my opinion, that we should. And I also feel that any tree that is a safety issue that risks people's health for whatever reason should come down at no expense to the person living closest to that tree. People cannot be replaced. We can replace trees. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tedison. Next up, we have Councillor Kassar.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and yeah, definitely appreciate safety concerns. I'd like to hear from staff just on the inspection and the status of the tree, just to round out the perspective, understand the correspondence from the resident and what the councillor shared. I'd just like to understand more about what has been done and the assessment of the tree from staff. Thanks.
Through the chair, Cynthia Graham, Director of Environmental Services. I have Robin Pollard here, Manager of Forestry and Horticulture, who has history on this file and can provide some context on the inspections and the assessments.
Through the chair, Manager of Forestry and Horticulture, arboriculture. You had it, I think. So the history of the tree, based on our records, we have multiple ways of maintaining trees within the city, maintaining public trees within the city. We have our grids program where we do we strive for a 7-year cycle. For this particular tree, the maintenance cycle on it was 2009. It was pruned through our grid cycle, and then again in 2017 or 2018 in the grid cycle, and then the secondary way that we maintain trees is by request or something that staff have noticed. This one was by request. So in 2025, in the fall of 2025, it was pruned again. So that is the maintenance cycle on it. Based on the concerns brought forward, we also completed a tree risk assessment, which you've noted in the motion. And the tree risk assessment, based on staff expertise, deemed the tree to be of low risk.
Okay, thank you. You know, it's a tough situation because there's different perspectives and we rely on staff to execute operations on all sorts of things around the city and trust them and their professional roles to make those assessments. So I feel kind of stuck here because we hear on one hand, there's a safety concern and from staff though that it's been addressed and that is low risk. So I just wonder what the precedent is set if this tree were to be removed based on, even though staff say it's fine, then, what happens if someone else has a feeling or some incident that staff doesn't assess as actual safety issue, and then they bring it here again. So I'm just concerned about the precedent and trying to balance that against safety concerns. So I'll listen to other speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kassar. Next up, we have Councillor Critch.
Thanks very much. I guess I want to understand the grading scale for risk for trees from staff. So is it no risk, low risk, medium, high? What does it look like?
Through the chair, the City of Hamilton's forestry section utilizes the ISA's tree risk assessment framework. This is internationally recognized. It is inherently no tree has no risk, so there is no rating for no risk. Low is the lowest risk rating. So you've got low, medium, high. What's taken into account is the tree in the situation based on where it is, the type of tree that it is, the condition that it's in, and what we call targets. And targets are sidewalks, hydro poles, human beings, cars, that sort of thing. And then it utilizes probability and likelihood to determine a rating.
Thank you. So it's the lowest possible risk that we can give a tree. Do we know, and we may not know this may be an unfair question, do we know how many linden trees or what percentage of the city's inventory are linden trees? Do we have a sense?
We do have a sense. Yes, linden trees also, I just want to clarify, there are two types of trees that we're talking about here. There are basswoods and then there are lindens. This is a linden, not a basswood. Very related, same genus, but not the same tree. Some people know them as big leaf and some people know them as little leaf. This would be a little leaf linden. This tree is incredibly common within our streetscape. We've got little leaf lindens account for about 5% of our street trees, which is pretty significant in a Carolinian forest.
Thanks very much. That's where I'm caught, is that this is the low risk, so the lowest risk assessment value we can apply to a tree, and there are many of them around. And so if we make a precedent here to say we're going to address this one specific tree because someone believes that it's a danger, though it's been rated as not a danger, then where does this take us? Because there are residents reaching out all the time asking this. My last question, though, is just about the cost. Not that I think it's exorbitant. I just don't know what it is. It's not in the motion. So it says that staff would absorb the costs. What would the costs be?
So this is a very generalized, sorry, through the chair, this is a generalized answer because we don't have a quotation for this. So I'm basing this on my professional opinion. We're probably looking in and around $6,000 to take the tree down and to grind the stump. And then there would be additional costs for plantings, which would be absorbed through our street tree planting budget.
Okay, thanks. That clears it up for me. Yeah, I don't think I can support this simply because I don't want to set the precedent. I think the city has and is using an internationally accredited system. It's the lowest possible risk, which means it shares the risk of every tree in the city that is out there without a risk, because low is as low as you can go. So that would really set, for me, a precedent of sort of saying, well, people can come forward and say, I don't want to have to pay to do this, or I think this should happen, or this, and we're going to ignore the internationally accredited advice, and I just can't do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Not a question, just an observation or a comment. I've got a number of trees in the community that residents have brought forward with concerns related to their perception of safety. Staff have gone out, they've conducted the reports, and I appreciate that there have to be guidelines and standards set. The report comes back with very low risk, and yet the tree continues to drop branches in the driveway, drop branches on vehicles, potentially drop branches on people. And I guess as an organization, from time to time, we need to step outside the guidelines and understand that perception of safety and safety are very closely linked, and particularly if these are dropping branches on vehicles in particular, as I've had the experience with residents in Ward 10. Exceptions get to be made every now and again, and I'm supportive of this from that standpoint, that the lived reality of the resident is that there is something at play here, and I'm keen to understand that with the residents and walk down that road with them.
Thank you. Next up, we have Councillor Pauls, then myself.
Thank you. And I think it's important that we listen to the councillor that knows more about this than us. But I just want, one of the whereas is that the linden tree was inspected by forest staff in September 2025, but that's because it was initiated by the person that lives there in the tree. Prior to that, it wasn't inspected. They said 209 and 217. Now, if something happens, we're expecting the owners to call the city now and say there's a branch that's going to fall, please come quickly, and if they don't, there's going to be a danger. So that concerns me a lot, when now we have to be watching for every tree that's in front of our house that the city owns, because I have few on my ward as well. They call me all the time. There's a tree and my kid plays right underneath the branch. I have to call quickly. So I'm just wondering, why do we wait so long, 2017, and we waited till September 2025 for someone to call us?
So to get some details on the proactive nature versus complaint-based
Right.
nature of assessment of trees?
Yep.
Through the chair, we have the grid maintenance program. So again, we strive for a 7-year cycle. At this point, based on a few delays, we are high 8, so 8 in a few months. So we're not hitting that 7-year cycle. So to your point, we do have a proactive cycle. It is supposed to be 7 years. We're not hitting that right now. We're at about 8 years. We do have the customer contact center, which, as you described, provides the citizens the opportunity to call in and ask us about, bring the concern to us. That's the service delivery standard at this point.
And thank you for that. And that is the reason why we depend on our counselor for that ward, a good counselor. They called him and they requesting to remove it. And that is the reason why I think we should be able to support this, because there is a problem and we would not want a branch falling in a car or on a child or whatever. So I'm going to support this because I trust my counselor, Matt Francis, to do his job at his area. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pauls. Through you, Vice Chair Kassar. I had an opportunity to check in with Councillor Francis just prior to the motion getting to the floor. I want to appreciate the perception of safety concern being something that causes real anxiety and real concern for residents across the city, whatever the issue is, and that needs to be addressed. I feel like that's where that complaint-based process comes in, and city staff going in and assessing it based on a concern that's been expressed by one of our residents. So I can really appreciate the concern and anxiety on the part of the residents. My concern from a governance perspective, though, is the 5%. The 5% of our entire canopy that is linden trees, the little leaf, very common ones. And what this perception of safety concern and this reaction would do versus the caliber and the rating of those trees. So my question through you, Vice Chair, is we do get an annual report of sorts, right, on trees. How do we get a better sense of security for our residents about that 5% of linden trees that are in our public realm?
Through the chair, in late February, you're going to see the first State of the Forest report, and I can take it back to staff to provide an overall summary around risk. I'm not sure that I can do this in this February report because it's been approved at this point, but I could certainly do that in future reports because, as I said, the risk rating is based on the type of tree, the condition, where it is, and we could provide a summary of risk across the street tree realm. We could also provide a summary of risk across parks and cemeteries and that sort of thing to really outline the current state of things.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Take back the chair. And next up, we have Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chair Nan. No questions to staff. Manager Robin Pollard has educated me on many tree species, which I've appreciated. And if I recall in past conversations, the linden tree is more prone to branches falling. You know, talk about low risk. Haven't many of us around this table this term brought petitions forward for speed cushions? And city staff have said, no, in our professional opinion, not warranted. And yet this body has, you know what, that particular councillor, Chair Nan, has said, you know what, this is important to my community, real or perceived. That speed cushion is important to my community in spite of professional staff saying, low risk, not necessary, we don't feel it's warranted. So please, we don't need to waste a lot of time on an individual matter with individual circumstances. None of us live at number 28 Battlefield, unless some of you maybe visit there from time to time. None of us do. The constituent, the homeowner, has said, this is a bothersome, this is a worry for safety, probably not just for himself and his family and visitors, but for people walking by as well. I'm strongly supportive of this. The ward councillors brought it forward, and I don't even understand why we're getting into some detailed discussion over this. Thanks, Chair Nan.
Okay, comments received, onwards, there's no speakers. It is in front of you.
Sorry, apologies,
my
Chair Nan. I
apologies.
tried to signal in the chat.
My apologies. Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I do just have one question for staff. I've been in the same situation where a resident is concerned about a tree, specifically older ones, more mature trees. They have a higher value to the forest, but also as things age, that point of stress can become different. And so, as with many other councillors who've shared their experience of having staff come out, I guess what happens in these situations, just as a matter of policy, walking away from the specific tree for a minute, when someone says, I have a concern about a tree, it's graded as low risk. Can you help me? I found in other circumstances, for example, the resident is then going in every major windstorm. This becomes the thing that worries them, or in those types of things. So is there a different level of service for trees that they're not waiting on this 8-year window? Because I think part of this is also how are we managing that risk? And it seems to me from just hearing the conversation, the options are we take the tree down or we don't take the tree down. And it's hard to build comfort in a situation where you have such binary options around that. And so I'm just wondering, how do we manage that risk? How is the resident involved in that risk in these situations where someone's concerned about a tree, but the steady or the on-site kind of shows that no, it's a low-risk tree currently? And how is that actively monitored? So if that risk changes, actions taken.
Through the chair. So as I noted, the GRIDS program is proactive and the complaints-based service request mode is also is reactive. When we look at a tree through the GRID cycle, the process right now is that staff look at it and they perform what is called a level 1 risk assessment, still through the ISA. And it is a single, from the ground, one-sided look at the tree. So they may be sidewalk side or they may be house side. So they're looking at 50% of the tree. Based on that visual inspection, if they deem the tree to be of low risk, they don't complete a level 2 tree risk assessment. If they deem it to probably be higher than low, then they complete a formal level 2 tree risk assessment, which is what was done on this tree, a level 2 tree risk assessment, much more in depth, takes into account all of the sides of the tree, the history of the tree, that sort of thing, conversations with people. All trees that have a level 2 risk assessment performed on them, part of that risk assessment is to assign a timeline for the next time that a risk assessment is completed. So all of those risk assessments are filed away, and the timeline is then repeated based on the inspection that was completed. This risk assessment showed that it should be done again in 2 years. Some can be 5 years, some could be 1 year.
Thank you. So through the chair, there are other options between taking the tree and not taking them the tree. It's just those weren't warranted in this specific situation based on staff's review. Is that a correct understanding? So for example, a different motion any of us could do, and I'm really not trying to talk about the specific stance, but more the policy in general, is we could also direct for a stage 2 assessment to be done to help mitigate that risk, as well as is something that would be possible to better understand the risk available.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Through the chair, I've had these instances before, and what I'll say is, well, I don't think I'm supportive of the motion in front of us for the reasons raised. I do just want to highlight, I think, what some other folks are raising, which is when you're the resident that's been told this tree is safe, there's been a forestry professional that's come out and conducted it, and then a big windstorm comes by. Then we get unprecedented weather events and we have changing things. I think that ability to be confident in that city staff assessment, not that I think we have professional staff, but I think that ongoing confidence that all those factors are considered, that changing weather patterns, that all those things are there, is a question that we've had from residents before, and just want to highlight the anxieties folks can feel. I feel comfortable in the risk mitigation I guess, policies that staff have overviewed with respect to further assessments being possible. But just if this is an area where we wanted to resource or wanted to build capacity, I can understand where residents are coming from, where they get that answer that says it's safe, but that doesn't necessarily feel like the right answer to them. And that leaves them in a difficult spot waiting for that next check. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have second time, Councillor Francis.
Thanks, Chair Nan. Regarding staff's assessment, this is really just a snapshot in time. They're there for 20 minutes, very brief period of time, versus actually having to live with this tree, the reality of having to live with this on a day-to-day basis. And not every street is the same, not every location is the same. Some trees are more exposed to the elements than others. There's wind factors. Every situation is unique. I just want to clarify on one of the questions there. Would staff be the ones that are going in and doing this work, city staff, or would that be contracted out through your chair?
Through the chair, do you mean the risk assessment or the tree removal?
The tree removal, my apologies.
That's all right. So there's two options. We could do it internally. We certainly have the expertise, and the forestry department completes 99% of our tree removals. However, sometimes we do contract out.
Understood. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. That exhausts our speakers list. It's before committee for vote. That carries on to notices of motion. If I could pass the chair. Oh, my apologies. We need to receive the correspondence first. Moved by Councillor Francis. Councillor Jackson was your seconder for the main motion, correct? Okay. On the correspondence then, if you could vote on that. Show of hands. Sorry, my apologies. Anybody opposed? Thank you so much. That carries. Now to notices of motion, over to you, Vice Chair.
Go ahead.
So I will be seeking to waive the rules for my colleagues, suspending the rules to introduce a motion respecting review of artificial turf and natural turf sports fields for consideration at Brightside Park, and looking to waive the rules in order to enable staff to get the work started sooner than later. And it's seconded by Councillor Kazar.
Okay, any speakers on waiving the rules? Seeing none, we'll go to electronic vote. Okay, that carries unanimously. So go ahead and present your motion.
Thank you. And then, again, it's moved by myself and second by Councillor Kassar. And I am going to take a moment to read the whereases because I want to appreciate that the notice of motion came late to the public agenda. So whereas Brightside Park project includes the replacement of Brian Timmins Field as part of the larger stadium precinct strategy and was identified as an artificial field design. And whereas since the time of the original mandate for the park development, 12, 14 years ago, the city has declared a climate emergency approved by Hamilton's climate action strategy, and term of council priorities confirm priority for accelerating the city's response to climate change, including emphasis on capital projects to address the factors of climate change, including a warming city environment. And whereas climate science reports for the city of Hamilton predict that the number of days at or above 30 degrees Celsius will increase on an average by 4 times by 2080, and that the duration of extreme heat events will also increase. Whereas Hamilton's community heat response strategy includes action number 5, vegetation cover expansion and maintenance by reducing artificial surfaces through increasing vegetation in parking areas, alleyways, streets, and other infrastructure. And whereas there is concern that artificial fields contribute to urban heat, and with the location of the future Brightside Park being in an area of high summer heat, as confirmed by the heat mapping, as having very high heat vulnerability in Appendix A of Report PW 25032, and whereas a fulsome study looking at all the factors that can be considered when determining the most suitable field type for Brightside Park, including life cycle, operational, and capital costs, as well as consideration of city priorities, directions, and most recent information and best practices, therefore be it resolved that staff be directed to complete a study to review the proposal of the artificial turf field versus a natural turf field, considering construction, operational, and life cycle renewal costs, climate or health impact considerations, recreation program implications, and any factors related to city goals, strategies, and council direction in specific consideration of choice of field for the application of Brightside Park, with a report back to PW Committee by the last meeting of this term of council. And B, that $100,000 support the study as well as any future cost to update the design drawings for the park development if a change to the design is directed by council, which would be funded through the Ward 3 Capital Reinvestment Reserve account as listed, and of course the standard language after that. And if I could, through you, Vice Chair, really want to appreciate staff from Public Works as well as the Climate Office who met with myself and my team to review what opportunities there might be. Unfortunately, this project, which is a legacy project, which will include the largest scale urban park of its magnitude in the lower city, this is an opportunity for us to move forward in a way that is responsive to the realities specific to my neighborhood, but also citywide. And so appreciating staff's diligence and recognizing that there's not necessarily an impact for time and implementation, but that there are other things that we as a committee would need to consider, Vice Chair, in making a final decision on this. We know that artificial turfs can increase the number of hours that recreation programming can take place on a field, for example. We know that natural fields might be, from an operational perspective, requiring more investment. But it's more important to make sure that we're making an evidence-based decision, and that's why everything that's itemized in Part A of this motion is there for committee's consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we do have a speakers list, starting with Councillor Jackson. Go ahead.
Narinder.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kassar. I'm strongly supporting this for the Ward 3 councillor. After all, it is in her ward. Secondly, Councillor Nan, you are most welcome. Past councils through the 2014 Pan Am Games eventually landed back in this precinct, rebuilding what was the Tim Hortons Field and now Hamilton Stadium, hopefully with a name returned to it for this coming season. So this was a side benefit, replacing Brian Timmins Stadium and Park right in the heart of your ward, and I've been strongly supportive of the replacement of that with Brightside Park in an even greater and better way. And thirdly, Vice Chair Kassar, I am fascinated and I'm going to be as curious as possible what staff come back with. Because all my football buddies, we've always had this conversation, this debate. Artificial turf, natural turf, hybrid turf, which one is better, which one has less injuries, which one can survive inclement weather. So more than anything, I am eagerly looking forward to this report coming back. Thanks, Vice Chair Kassar.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and through you. I'm also supportive of this. It reminded me of a exercise that I had the opportunity to participate in when I was serving on the district school board, where we were reviewing the pros and cons of artificial versus natural. Where are some appropriate more so than others? The hours of use, as the mover alluded to, is part of that consideration. But it also, in my nostalgic look back, it raised a question with me, and perhaps I can ask the mover, just in terms of a consultation piece with the district school board, because it strikes me by memory that the Brightside Park, there was a partnership or an agreement or a wish to do so with the district school board that this was viewed as the play field for Bernie Custis. And I'm wondering, I didn't see it mentioned specifically, but is there an opportunity for some kind of a consultative process with the district school board, the HWDSB, perhaps through the liaison committee, perhaps through other methods, but wanting to make sure that we still honor that original intent, going back all those years to when we started down this path together, and maybe there were funds assigned by the district school board of the day that are still kind of hanging in limbo somewhere, but the mover's thoughts or staff's thoughts in terms of being able to honor that partnership with HWDSB on moving forward with this consideration.
Thanks, Councillor Beattie. We'll go to staff. Director Graham.
Through the chair, Cynthia Graham, Director of Environmental Services. Happy to have conversations with the school board. I believe you are remembering correctly that there was, at the time, a conversation about the use of this field for sports, for extracurriculars, and we would want to make sure that we're accommodating that information in the analysis, and happy to work with the school board on what their needs are.
Okay. Then if staff are satisfied and the mover is satisfied, then I'm satisfied, and perhaps we'll just add it as an agenda item just to track as well through the liaison committee. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Beattie. Councillor Francis.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm supportive of taking a look at this. Councillor Nan getting as much information as possible before making a decision. It is her ward here, so as a former football player, Councillor Jackson, I actually preferred the artificial surface, and I do still play occasionally, although I do not get injured from the artificial surfaces. It's more consistent, and there's greater opportunities to play in all sorts of weather conditions, including extending well into the winter months, and extending that opportunity for folks to be active when they wouldn't be able to do that otherwise on a natural playing surface. The city does close those down, and they do close them during inclement weather events. So my concern really is around the lack of artificial turf fields in the city of Hamilton, particularly in the football world and rugby world. And what happens is they actually require artificial because there's a lot of times where out-of-town teams will come in to play from all over the place. They'll come from out of province, they'll come great distances within our province, and we've seen what happens if they're playing on a grass surface and there's a weather event that happens and the city shuts it down. These teams are spending literally thousands of dollars in travel money that cannot be easily rebooked, at least not at large expenses, to accommodate this. So we're really dying, the football and rugby community is really dying for a artificial surface that is city-owned, not school board-owned. The school board has a lot of challenges. They can be very restrictive. So my question really is to staff, if this is considered and it goes forward, when that report back comes back and we do eventually go in the direction of a natural surface, is there still an opportunity, whether that be Rush Jackson Field, which would be a great candidate, or Mohawk Sports Park would be another great candidate. I'm sure we could find others. Is there an opportunity to have that conversation to fill that gap that is much needed?
Through the chair. So the recreation master plan does identify the needs for sports across the city and does identify that artificial turf is one of those that we don't have a lot of. There is one field at Heritage Green that I'm aware of that is city-owned. So the intent of this motion and the funding is to report back on all of the factors that could be brought forward as part of a decision in order to inform the design of Brightside Park going forward. That wouldn't necessarily be applied to every location citywide, but the data and review would certainly be able to be adapted to other situations for information. So it's research that could benefit other decisions in the future. And our teams in recreation are part of the team that would participate in this study and can advise on the rec master plan and the recommendations as part of the analysis.
Thank you so much. And Chair, that raises my comfort level. I look forward to seeing that additional information. Hopefully that informs that future decision. I appreciate you referencing Heritage Green. I know that currently isn't to football or rugby standards, but there's potential there. The only real true turf field we have is at Hamilton Stadium, and as you know, between the Hamilton Forge and the Hamilton Tiger Cats, very difficult to get community time there. And when you do get community time there, there are expenses that are well above a normal facility that in the city of Hamilton. So look forward to this coming back. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Francis. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Just more of a comment. I mean, I think this is good because it's going to give us some sense of, I guess, criteria in terms of when we go artificial, when we go natural. I know in my ward it's come up a number of times, and so I'm hopeful that when we come back, we establish some real criteria in terms of where we go with artificial or natural, or maybe it'll be, one or the other, or maybe, as Councillor Francis mentioned, a hybrid approach. But I really am hopeful that we'll come back with some specific criteria and when an artificial field is required and when a natural one is, because we're going through the same conversation in my ward right now to say, are we going natural or are we going artificial? And so I really think as we start to have this broader conversation across our city, that we have that criteria really firmly established in terms of understanding, whether we go one direction or another. So I will also be supporting Councillor Nan's motion here as well. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Cooper. And as we heard, we have Recreation Master Plan, and then this is more information to inform it going forward beyond this particular instance. So I think that will be helpful. And Councillor Kretsch. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just to staff, do we have criteria on this? Is it more of a site-specific way that we look at some things? Because I know that we discussed this here at council previously when we discussed things like wood chips in parks, and then that discussion came up. And as you know, there's many issues in Ward 2 with some school board properties where we go through this routinely. So it's giving you a chance to respond to this idea that we do or don't have criteria or what the process looks like.
Through the chair. So my recollection is that there is criteria that is identified in the Recreation Master Plan that talks about what type of facility or amenity is desired to meet the needs citywide. What this study will provide that we don't have, though, is the detailed life cycle and operational costs of either or. So, the impacts of irrigation costs or the ongoing maintenance and upkeep of a natural turf versus the life cycle costs after the artificial turf is worn out. So that's the type of comparison that we don't currently have side to side that will help with this particular conversation and can be then used for other decisions.
If you could clarify, because that, of course, information exists, broadly speaking, through empirical research around turfs. So we do actually, the world has that information. What are we gaining by getting it here for the city of Hamilton? Like, I don't understand the distinction, because we do have standards. There are discussions about this happen, and there's peer-reviewed research.
Yeah, through the chair. So it's a matter of pulling that data and then applying it to the specific location at Brightside, how much water would be used, what is our staff costs for maintenance, what specialized equipment do we need, and then what is the newest technology with respect to grading and drainage and the different artificial field materials that are not applicable from our current example at Heritage Green, which is over 10 years old and technology changes. So that's the kind of, it's more gathering of data and consolidating it into a report that is applicable in a Hamilton context that will help with this decision.
Thanks. And through the vice chair, I guess what I'm also asking here is, are you going to develop a tool that we can use? So what I'm hearing you say is, right, as these larger projects come up that have a big impact, Heritage Green, Brightside Park, because stuff I'm talking about in Ward 2 is like very small things that are probably bespoke and easy to deal with. But as large projects come up, I don't think the city's plan is to wait and then try and apply it again to that specific project. But I think what you're saying is we're going to gather data, develop a tool that can be used elsewhere, something that can be updated regularly, that we won't require a report or funding to analyze. Is that what you're trying to do, is create a baseline, create a tool? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Through the chair, this will definitely provide research and information that can be a baseline, and then as new projects are brought forward, we can take a look at that data in order to inform what is the best decision for each site going forward. It's a similar kind of analysis that we often do with respect to spray pad design and whether there's a recirculating system versus the systems that we have now. It looks at how much water do we have used on an ongoing basis versus the costs of dechlorination and all of those different pieces that we have all that information. It's pulling it together in a way that's actually usable for making decisions.
Thanks, I really appreciate that. I think what I heard is that the criteria we have right now exists, but some of the data we're using to underpin that criteria is out of date. And so we can't make really well-informed decisions citywide without a bit more data, and this allow us to do two things. One, solve a problem in Ward 3 in terms of understanding what's best there, but also something we can apply citywide, which is useful. Thank you.
Okay, there are no more speakers. Just a quick look around. Still no speakers. Okay, we will go to the electronic vote. The vote is up. And that carries unanimously. I'll hand the chair back to you.
Thank you, committee colleagues, for your support on that one. Thank you to our Public Works staff for all your preparation and support during today's meeting, to the legislative clerk team and everybody in chambers. We are not going into closed camera because that wasn't required for the agreement portion of a previous agenda item. So I believe we have nothing else on the agenda unless you have a notice of motion, anyone? Seeing none. Take care, have a good afternoon. Meeting adjourned.